Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for watching the episode 74 launch party. I'm Rob Farker, the host of Paid to Play, and I am hosting these online get togethers for my Patreon backers, specifically those who've come in at the $21 a month level or higher. I apologize for the sudden upswing in background noise. It's 9:30 in the morning here on Sunday, February the 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I hope that if you do have someone close to you, that you're able to have a great day with them. And if not, I hope you have a great opportunity to spend some quality time getting to know and love yourself a little bit better, because really, how can we expect to properly love anyone else if we really deep down don't give a shit about the person whose skin we live in? So I hope that you're having a great day. I apologize for the lateness of this get together, and also the lateness of episode 74. My chat with Joel Zaslofsky, a simple living expert and fellow podcaster. I apologize for the delay in it going live this morning. I will get to that soon. I just wanted to get a couple of bits of podcast business out the way first. I actually got to have a dry run at this a few minutes ago because I was talking to the camera and the little blue light was on, telling me that it was online and I could see myself on the thing. And then I actually had a look down at the bottom of this Hangouts on air screen that I have, and it said start broadcast. And in the top right hand corner, it said off the air. So there I was doing a show and actually not going out to the internet or anywhere at all. So yes, it's been one of those mornings, and I suppose one of those weeks. But onto that in a few minutes. Firstly, podcast business. I have, as promised, revamped the Patreon page. So you will find, if you go to www.patreon.com, that's Patreon Papa Alpha Tango Romeo Echo Oscar November.com /paid to play, and that's two with a T-O, not a number two, a letter T and a letter O, play, all one word, no spaces or hyphens or other special characters. You will find the rewritten what the podcast is about page, and specifically what I am hoping Patreon will do. If you've seen the season 4 launch party from a couple of weeks ago, when I hung out with a few fans, I talked a little bit about what I'm hoping that the Patreon page will do. In short, I want it to cover things like new location recording equipment, as my laptop is now stuffed. Also, perhaps editing of episodes, because I've come to realize recently, and more on that soon, that I will only edit stuff for free if it's my own stuff. Editing is a right royal pain in the ass, and the main reason why it's not so bad doing it for the podcast is because it lets me re-listen to my chat with somebody else and make notes for links and other such items in the show notes for the page. So yes, I would really like the Patreon campaign, and if you guys could get behind it for a certain amount a month. It's no longer per episode, so the monthly bill might not take you by surprise as much, although you are able to set limits on it. It is per month, and I'm still working on a new episode every fortnight with a goal of 20 episodes for this year, season 4. So please, if you're not already a Patreon backer, and excuse me, I just need a quick sip of tea before it's getting to me. If you're not already a Patreon backer, I would love it if you could go in, have a look, and consider chipping in a few bucks a month. Let me know what you think of the reward levels. I'd been putting them up for a week or so beforehand, and had some minimal feedback on them. So please, if you've got an opinion, or if you have something that you reckon you would love me to do for you, if you could chip in X bucks a month, get in touch and we'll see what I can do. So that is live. Patreon is up. Also, the Paid to Play podcast now has its own Twitter feed. Up until now, I have been asking people to follow me on my personal Twitter feed, which is @ByRobF. But I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I think I saw somebody else's separate. Oh, actually, of course I know what it was. My guest for episode 73, Jeff Salmonen, has a separate feed for his project Lost Hope, which I think is in its last day or two of its Kickstarter campaign. I tell you what, if you will excuse me and excuse the typing noises, Kickstarter.com. I want to see where that is at the moment because I did interview him for the show and kick episode, season 4 off a little bit earlier than I was planning to, so that I could get the show to give him a little bit of support and get people to hear Jeff in a way that they might otherwise not be able to. Their goal is 30,000 Canadian dollars. Their current achieved is $6,446, and they currently have 53 hours to go, so that is slightly more than 2 days. I'm still paying off my Christmas funds, Christmas expenses, sadly. So I can't really chip in right at the moment. I am hoping, even if it's in lieu of you guys getting behind me on Patreon for a month, I'm hoping you folks can get behind Jeff and Natalie, who are working on this fantastic series. You can go and check it out on losthope.tv. They've even got a couple of short clips which pretty much look like they could come straight out of a completed episode once they get those done. So yeah, it looks like it's going to be bags of fun. Get behind it if you can. So getting back on point, seeing Jeff's Lost Hope Twitter feed, Lost Hope series, if you're not following it already, as separate from his personal feed, made me think, well, maybe it's about time that I carved Paid to Play off and gave it its own Twitter feed with its own name, which is Paid Play Podcast. That's all one word, no spaces, no hyphens. There is no 2 in there. I didn't want to put a number 2 in. I think I might have had the room for it in the name, but either way, there definitely wasn't room for a TO2. Pardon me, I'm just going to take another sip because you can hear my throat's getting a bit thingy again. Pardon me. And sorry for nudging the microphone there. Slow down a little bit, Rob. That would probably help. Deep breaths. Take it easy. Don't worry about your anxiety attacks. You'll be fine. You've done this plenty of times before, even though video is still a little bit of a new medium. So, okay. So, yes, Paid Play Podcast is now a Twitter account. And if you are already following Rob F, looking mainly for podcast updates, please also follow Paid Play Podcast. Even if you do want to unfollow Rob F and just stick with Paid Play Podcast for the moment, that would be fine. No worries. I am going to be putting podcasty things up there first and letting my personal feed be a bit more personal. So that's the podcasty business out of the way. As I mentioned a little earlier on, this episode was about an hour and a half late going live. It's 9:30 now, and I finally managed to get the Paid to Play podcast. You know what? I'm just having a quick look at Twitter, and I'm starting to wonder, can I... is there any way I can share this link? Episode... launch party. I wonder if I can put this up on Paid to Play's account. The episode 74 launch party is now live on Google Hangouts. Come take a look. join if you're backing at Plus on Patreon. And let's turn that Patreon into an at Patreon so I can take that in. Pardon me. All right, tweet that and maybe retweet it on my personal account as well. View 16 new tweets. So, hey. And I am following Pay to Play. And favorite that and retweet it. My phone's probably going to go ding dong in a second, or dong ding as the case may be, letting me know that I have retweeted my own post on my other account. And while I'm at it, right now on Google. Let's publish that. All right, so that's up on Facebook, and can I share that on my personal profile? Watch me rabbit on live on camera. Grinny face. All right, post that. All right, so I'll keep an eye on the Hangout page just in case somebody does drop in and comment. We'll see what happens. Okay, then. I don't know if anyone's viewing at the moment, but if you are, please say something on the episode 74 launch party event page, or tweet me back at paidtoplay.com, at paidplay podcast on Twitter. So I will do my best to keep an eye on there. So I was, before I let myself get distracted there, going to talk about why this episode was a little bit on the late side. Basically, I think I overcommitted a bit this week. I had a few things on and I let my enthusiasm, it's kind of the flip side of the anxiety that I find torpedoes so much in my life, is when I get a little bit over enthusiastic. The temptation is to throw around the word bipolar, but really I don't think I have it anywhere. I don't think the swings are anywhere near, clinical bipolar disorder level. They're a struggle. Just ask my wife, Vicky, who is taking it easy in bed at the moment with a very dodgy back. It seems like her body's basically just not really liking her right at the moment. I think I let anxiety get me a little bit overcommitted to a few things. One of them was I joined a podcast group on Facebook. Actually, I'd say joined. I was invited into a podcast community on Facebook by my guest for, fingers crossed, episode 75 of the show, Ross Barber. I say fingers crossed because I was experimenting with doing video recording. And unfortunately, the program I used, it did something horrible to the audio. Ross is a website designer and album cover designer for independent musicians. He has a website called Electric Kiwi, so go check him out at his site. He's also a keen podcaster himself, and he's in Scotland, is Ross, and he's got a friend in the States. and they have a video show called Bridge the Atlantic, and they have a guest on every episode. They do it weekly, the Maniacs, and I decided, what the heck, let's see if we can get him on video for this. And thankfully, he recorded his half of it, but I still have to get the files off him. So, Ross, please, if you can get in touch and give me a link from which I can download those files and do some editing, or at the very least, just crank out an audio episode, that would be great. And as I was saying, joined the group that Ross invited me into, and am getting to know a few pretty cool podcasters. And there was this one guy who does a show called Random Transmissions, which is this quirky little short story show. He reads submissions that people send in with a weird fiction or a post-apocalypse science fiction kind of theme to them. And rather than sort of getting tongue-tied, deep breaths again, Rob. Be zen. Be zen. Someone's going to make a gif out of that, I'm sure. Somebody's going to have to. So, now that I've tried to slow down a bit, he bookends. There we go. Got that out. His stories, rather than being a regular podcast host introducing the story as himself, he takes on the role of this survivor who is sequestered in his underground bunker, weathering out the apocalypse and the radiation and I think the zombies up on the surface. And he's basically making these transmissions as a way of reaching out to his fellow survivors and letting them know that they're not alone out there, and entertaining them as best he can. And I was struck by, a moment of whimsy, and I got in touch with him and said, hey, could you use a reader? And he sort of said, well, I was thinking of doing them all myself, but yeah, sure, what the hell? And I sent him some of my samples, like the Ogre short story I re-recorded a few months ago. And he sent me something to read, which turned out was fairly lengthy, and I said, yeah, no problem. But yes, in between going to board gaming and various things, I wound up doing his recording a little bit later than I was planning to. And then I had to do it in 2 chunks, and then I had to sit down and edit it. And I edited part 1. And I tell you what, folks, I've learned that I despise editing audio. It's not too bad doing it for this show, because in part I'm not only editing, but I'm also listening back, not just to my voice, but to a chat with somebody else. And I'm not just cleaning up and editing. I am also, I might just back up my Twitter feed just to make sure I am seeing anybody's questions in case they are sending them in. I ought to ask people to do a hashtag P2P launch party, just so I can search for you guys and know that you are tweeting. Oh, and what do you know? Bridge the Atlantic are promoting their new episode, which went live from the looks of things, or at the very least they put a new tweet up about it 7 minutes ago. So I'm just going to very quickly retweet that. Oh, for God's sake. Like, retweet. Nice work, guys. Yeah, so the editing work on that episode took longer than I thought, and it was a lot more unpleasant and frustrating than I thought it was going to be. So I think I've decided, when it comes to doing freelance stuff, ideally, I'm not going to be editing for free. I will try and do work that does not involve audio editing as much as possible. And I think if there is anything, if I needed to do something that does require editing and cleanup, then I suppose, folks, it might be better if I organise studio time to do it, because you can probably hear in the background I've got road noise. When I did edit that episode, it was done at a fairly quiet time, but the microphone did still pick up some stuff that in some places I just couldn't get rid of. And when it's a podcast, it's not so bad, especially when the person on the other end of the microphone is on the we're connecting up via Skype, so any noise that does happen on my side, I can pretty much eliminate very easily without anybody noticing. And if something does come up while I'm asking questions or giving a bit of commentary, then that's no big deal. So yeah, between that and going to board gaming on Thursday night and having a character creation session for the Deathwatch RPG on Saturday night, that wound up taking a bit more time than I was hoping it was going to. And yeah, sadly enough, it means that I think I might have gone a bit over time on providing that podcast to him. So I wound up, rather than putting time into editing this show and making sure it was good to go perhaps a day early, so all I had to do this morning was get up and hit publish on everything. I wound up finishing up the editing and the page updates and show notes for my chat with Joel, and that's why it was about an hour and a half late getting up. Crikey, it's coming up on 10 to 10. So I've been rabbiting on for a good 20 minutes now. Time flies when you're brain dumping. I have a couple of things in the background that I kind of wanted to sort of shill a little bit. And as I mentioned, I wound up doing a character creation session online yesterday for an RPG called Deathwatch, which is this. I'll hold it up for the camera, and I'm just going to switch windows at the moment so I can see what I'm holding up, and let's make sure I've got this oriented correct. So this is Deathwatch. This is the core rule book for the Deathwatch tabletop role-playing game. Some of you folks who might be watching who are more of a geeky event will probably recognize the figures on the cover as Space Marines from the Warhammer 40,000 miniatures battle game. Space Marines are the most recognized force and probably the most popular force in Warhammer 40,000. They're, the human paragon of the super soldier. So that means, every most preteen or pubescent boys kind of latch onto them at some point a little bit for their, utter death metal hardcoreness. And yeah, I've got a couple of folks locally who are keen on playing it, and I'm going to be rocking over their place on Saturday night to give it a go. And it's going to be the first time I've GM'd an RPG in a little while, and I'm hoping my anxiety doesn't get the better of me, as it so often does with these bloody things. I've got an adventure pretty much ready to go, so we should be all right. But yeah, I'll, if you're remotely interested in that next launch party, I might just tell you about how I went, because I do like to talk a little bit about the play side of what I'm doing, and God knows, maybe that's the sort of thing that might wind up with some sort of paying gig. How can we tell? We don't know until we try. And the other thing I've got in the background, which ties into me doing board gaming on Thursday night, is this bad boy, XCOM the board game. It is called XCOM the board game because, like Deathwatch, it's actually based on another property, which happens to be let me just sit a bit more sideways so I get my head in, the XCOM series of computer and video games where you play the commander of a secret special operations organization protecting the Earth from alien invasion. I like to think of it as Men in Black Hawk Down. That's kind of the elevator pitch for it, the sort of secret high-tech ethos of Men in Black with the special operations. Anything can go wrong at any minute, boots on the ground, mud and blood, kind of look at military life that Ridley Scott's Black Hawk Down movie gave us. And it is bags of fun to play. It's not a cheap board game. It's a pretty hefty box, as you can see. And I talked about that a lot in episode 73 with Jeff Salmon. And so that was what I was talking about, folks. And it is, yeah, I've been playing it a lot, and it's still fun to play. I enjoy getting together with the folks at the Wicked Goblin on a Thursday night and playing it with them. And yes, aside from that, a little bit on the aspirational side, as you guys might have seen on my personal Facebook and Twitter feeds, I have been eyeing off the core rulebook for Star Wars, Force, and Destiny, one of the 3 role-playing games currently on sale. There have been several others in the past that have gone out of print and their makers are no longer supporting them. Yes, the 3 games currently available based in the Star Wars universe, and we are talking about the universe of the original trilogy, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. That's something that I would love to play and or game master, because I think when it comes down to it, of all the various fictions I'd love to imagine myself in or play in, Star Wars kind of nails it, really, for just having everything from adventure to high technology and spaceships to a kind of strong core of the struggle, both externally and internally, of good and evil, the 2 sides of the Force and all that kind of thing. And from what I've seen of Force and Destiny, that's what makes it the most attractive of all of those 3 core RPGs, which are Edge of the Empire, which focus on smugglers and people who exist on the fringe, your Han Solos and Chewies and your Boba Fett's, and all those kinds of people who kind of just trying to do the best they can outside of the galactic battle between the Empire and the Rebellion. Then there is Age of Rebellion, which is straight up about that fight, which is where the players are enlisted members of the Rebel Alliance, soldiers, spies, special ops, starfighter pilots, and the characters are very much about that. And that's what I should mention with Edge of Empire. The core idea, from what I gather of Edge of the Empire, because I've not actually seen the rulebook itself, is this idea of obligation, that problem that Han Solo had of maybe wanting to do good, but owing a debt to Jabba the Hutt, and then later having, well, actually kind of at the same time, having a price on his head, with bounty hunters trying to bring him in because he owed Jabba money, and Jabba the Hutt cannot be seen to be letting people taking money from him and then getting away without any consequences. So I think Edge of the Empire is kind of all about that, trying to do good for the galaxy with balancing the fact that you've gotten in with somebody who maybe you shouldn't have gotten in with, but had no choice but to. Making sure that you service that obligation properly. You do what they tell you to, and try and balance that with your conscience. Age of the Empire is very much about rebellion, and its core concept is duty, and every character kind of has an aspect to them, from what I've seen of the rulebook, that relates to that war effort and how they can best contribute to it. But I kind of really like what Force and Destiny does, where all of the characters, the Force is with them, and more so than everybody in the galaxy, because the Force is everywhere and surrounds us and penetrates us and binds the galaxy together, in the words of Obi-Wan Kenobi. They are the ones for whom the Force is truly with, and it's that balance of the light in their personalities and the dark, about how they've got something, an aspect of themselves that in certain circumstances is a power for good, that they can use it to drive themselves and make a difference, versus the flip side of that same drive that might make them push too far and call upon the worst sides of their natures, or even perhaps flee when they should stand their ground. And I don't know why, but of all of those 3 games, that's the one that appeals to me most, and I would like to game master that at some point and get a bunch of people together. Got a few people interested, and it looks like it will probably be using Roll20, if anything else, basically because the people who are interested are all over the east coast of Australia, and I've got a friend of mine in the States who's also kind of interested in seeing if we can get in, if the time zones allow. But I think, well, that pretty much brings it to the end of what I wanted to talk about in this show. Let's have a quick look at the Twitter feed. Has anybody said anything? No comments on Twitter. Nothing on the episode 74 launch party page. So I think really that is about it, folks. If you do have any questions, I would be very much happy to take them. You can tweet me at Paid Play Podcast. You can comment on the Paid to Play Podcast webpage. Got a couple of notifications, I think. No, completely unrelated. No worries. So yes, you can comment on the Pay to Play website. And once again, folks, I would love it if you could get behind me on Patreon. It would help me do things. As I mentioned earlier on, I'm really at the point where I don't like to edit shows. So if I can reach a particular milestone, so as you I'm not sure because I've had to do this twice. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it already, but I do have new milestones and rewards up on the Patreon page, patreon.com/paid to play. Getting a bit froggy in the throat again. So if you folks could help me make Paid to Play a bit better, if I can take time away from having to edit, it means I can do other things to help boost the podcast profile and make the shows a bit better. And as I think I might have mentioned, I am looking at doing another live event, maybe two, if I can get the backers to support me going to a couple of regional cons that are going on this year. I would really appreciate your support for that. So please get behind me on Patreon. And yes, it's now pretty much time to wrap this up. I've been working on taglines. Stand by your play is... it's good, but I don't know, it doesn't quite have some snappiness to it. So I'm going to try a new one here. I'll put it out. We'll see what you think of it. So once again, I am, and I will continue to be Rob Farker. And I would like to ask you folks to be good, to be kind, be a little bit dangerous. Now, here's the important point. How do I turn this damn thing off?